Good morning, everybody. Good morning and happy Monday. My name is Jennifer, and I'm with English in the City Prazo. And this morning, we're doing another focus activity. This morning, as every other morning, we are live, not just on YouTube. We are also live on our Facebook page. So I hope everyone has had a relaxing weekend and is ready to start a new week. We know that a lot of times our focus activities give us the opportunity to escape a little bit from the everyday routine. Good morning, Lucrezia. Good morning, Andrea. And good morning, Greta. Thank you very much. In fact, I remembered this time that Natasha is not Natasha. Natasha is Greta. Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. For those of you just tuning in, my name is Jennifer, and I'm a teacher with English in the City Prazo. And this morning we are doing Focus Activity 6-7. Good morning, Ivranieri. Thank you for joining me this morning. I see we have a very nice group already. Happy Monday to everyone. I hope you all had a good, relaxing weekend and that you are all ready to start the new week. Today's focus activity is level 6-7, and we're going on another trip. I absolutely love these focus activities where we can travel a little bit and put our English into practice. So this week, today, we're going on another trip and we're spending a week somewhere else. If you remember other activities when we've talked about going on holiday or going on vacation, and one of the types of holiday is a city break. A city break is usually when you visit another city for just a few days. It could be a long weekend. Good morning, Gianmarco. Thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you had a good weekend. So a city break can be simply a long weekend, for example, from Thursday to Monday. Or it could be a week getaway where you visit another city that's not so far away, that's a little bit closer to home. For example, being in Tuscany or being in Prato or near Florence, a city break could be a week in Rome. A city break could also be a week or a long weekend in London or Paris or maybe Amsterdam. So when we need to get away, not a tremendous holiday for 2 or 3 weeks where we're completely changing language, money, culture, and everything else, but it could just be a break from the mundane, a break from a routine to give us a chance to relax a little bit and come back home fresh and ready to start again. So today's focus activity, as I said, is level 6-7, and we're going on a city break. Good morning, Sandra. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going away for a week or a long weekend. We are taking a city break. In this focus activity this morning, we're going to decide what to do in a city. We're going to visit your teacher, me, my hometown. We're going to be using superlatives and we're going to learn how to make recommendations. So every city has its attractions. So when we decide which city we want to visit, usually that city has something in it that we want to see. And that could be a museum. It could be a monument. It could possibly be a type of restaurant. And that's how we can also recommend that city to someone else. So let's get started, and we're going to talk briefly about London. We're going to review these 4 questions together as a group. Have you been to London? When is the best time to go to London? What are the most famous landmarks in London? And what would you most like to see in London? We're going to consider these 4 questions together. So, of our group this morning, has anyone here been to London? And if you have, when did you go? I think London is one city that a lot of us have visited, if not once, maybe a few times. Good morning, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're feeling well, and I hope you had a good weekend. My weekend was somewhat hectic, as my weekends usually are. I'm more relaxed at work, if you can believe it or not. So, Eric, this morning we started our focus activity. And we are talking about London, Eric. Have you been to London? Has anyone else in the group been to London? London is a city close enough that most of us can go to quite easily and possibly just spend 4 or 5 days to get a feel of it, to see what it's like. And especially now that we have so many fantastic English students, I'm sure it'd be a fabulous experience for all of you to visit London. No, you've never been to London. Has anyone else been to London? I actually have only been to London once, a very, very long time ago. Before I arrived in Florence, I was in London for 2 weeks. So it's been over 20 years. Lucrezia says, yes, I've been there 2 years ago for 5 days with my boyfriend, my favorite city. And Greta says, you've never been to London, Greta? Well, would you like to go? Keep in mind, Lucrezia, that when you said, the question was, have you been to London? So when you hear a question, have you been? Short answer, yes, I have, no, I haven't. And we know that is the present perfect. Once you add a specific time reference, for example, you said, I've been there, and your time reference is 2 years ago. So all of a sudden, when we have a time reference, the sentence goes into past simple. So your answer could be, Lucrezia, the question, have you been to London? Yes, I have. Then the second question was, when did you go? Oh, I went 2 years ago with my boyfriend. And from what you say, Lucrezia, you like London. It's your favorite city. And Ranieri says he went to London in 1999. Wow, that's a long time ago. That's about the same time I went. Actually, no, I think I beat you. I went in 1997. 1997. I went through London in order to get to Barcelona. And that was it. I was only there for about 6 days. So for those of us who have visited London, when is the best time to go? We know that London is famous for its gray weather. Most people don't say, oh my goodness, the weather is so fabulous in London. The sun is shining, the skies are blue. Usually it's rainy, the skies are somewhat gray, and it's dreary. That's the stereotype anyway. So taking that into consideration, when do you think is the best time to go to London? Would you want to visit London in winter? Or do you think it's better to visit London in the summer, where you have a better chance of good weather? I actually went to London in October, and it rained every single day for 2 weeks. It was cold and rainy. And then I left London and I went to Madrid, which is a fantastic city. I loved Madrid. So of the 4 seasons in the year, hi, Carolina, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Ranieri says that he visited London in July in 1999. So you went to London in the summer. Would you recommend visiting London in the summer? Andrea, thank you so much. He has been to London. He went to London a few years ago, but you don't know the best time to go there. Well, when you went to London, Andrea, was it during the winter or the summer? Lucrezia, as I'd like to go there at Christmas or in during the Christmas time, I think it could be fantastic. Who are you, Catalina? I'm, oh, okay. That's okay, Carolina. You're late. No, you're not. You're right on time. This is actually the first slide. We've just started our focus. Sandra says it's very diplomatic. In my opinion, every season is good to visit London, although if in summer, it's incredibly hot. Okay. Carolina, that's okay. And because Daniele said also that he visited London in July, and it was good weather. Weather. Thank you very much. Well, Sandra, have you been to London? And if you did, if you have, when did you go? Lucrezia says, I went there in July too. It was too hot. Really? I had no idea London was so hot. I would imagine it would be hot and humid. Like, I wouldn't suggest visiting New York in July. July and August is not a good time to visit New York. It's full of tourists at that time, but I do not recommend it. So when you go to London, whether you go during the summer or during the winter, or at Christmas time, which would be beautiful. Okay, so Andrea visited London in December, right after the time that I was in London. It wasn't very cold because their weather is somewhat mild. It's in the middle, so it doesn't snow in London, but it rains. So if you're in the wet months, it rains. And Carolina says, you went to London 2 years ago. Okay, everyone keep in mind that if I ask the question, have you ever been or have you been, we're using present perfect, which is not time specific. It's happened in the past, but we don't know exactly when. Once you attach a specific time reference, 2 years ago, last July, 1999, in December, all of a sudden our sentence takes on past simple. Okay. And Sandra says, I've been there in every season, but unfortunately never during Christmas. So there are certain cities I think are fantastic to see at Christmas time. London being one of them, yes. Lucrezia, yes, about 30 degrees, but I had only an umbrella and away in my luggage. So you only had an umbrella when you visited London in the summertime. Now, whether we go to London in the winter or the summer, whether it's raining or whether it's hot, what are the most famous landmarks to visit in London? So this also gives us an idea of an activity. So if there are sites that you want to see in London, what can you do there? For those of you who know certain activities, tourist activities, when you are on a city break, when you're visiting a city, one of these activities is sightseeing. What is sightseeing? Sightseeing is when you visit a city, not necessarily going inside certain places, but where you walk about the city and you take photos and you visit monuments. And you learn about the city by walking around. That's called sightseeing. Whereas if we decide to visit a museum, that's something else. If we decide to eat in a restaurant, that's something else. Or go shopping is a different activity. But sightseeing is where we visit the city without going inside. And sightseeing is also how we see the famous landmarks in a specific city. So do any landmarks come to mind if I'm going to London? What are the most famous landmarks to see? One of them I know is the Queen's House. And if you're lucky, when you go to London, the Queen is actually at home and she can wave to you from her terrace. For those of us who haven't been to London, what would you most like to see? For example, I think it was Greta who said that she has never been to London. But let's say you go to London, Greta. What do you want to see? And Carolina adds that she saw the Wax Museum. That's a wax museum with the giant statues made of wax. I think that's would be a little bit scary. And you saw the Queen's Castle. Very good. What's the name of the Queen's Castle? Buckingham Palace. Andrea adds Big Ben, which is the clock, and the Houses of Parliament and Tower Bridge. Fantastic. These are 3 landmarks that people go visit or people see in London without necessarily going inside. For example, I don't even know if you can go inside Big Ben. Maybe it's like the Statue of Liberty where you can actually go inside. But most people see Big Ben from the ground. And they also visit the Houses of Parliament, but they don't always go inside. And the same with Tower Bridge. So a lot of these are simply things that we can see, but we don't always go inside. For those of you who haven't visited London, what would you like to see? I visited London a long time ago, and I actually don't remember what I saw. Daniele says, in particular, I visited other monuments, museums, and Buckingham Palace, and specifically, I took the battle and went for Hampton Court. What's Hampton Court? I've never heard of that. And Big Ben, Bridge, and a lot of parks and museums. Greta says, I don't visit London and museums and monuments, but I'd like to visit Big Ben and Buckingham Palace. The bath, not battle. Thank you, Daniele. And Carolina adds the cathedral, the Notre Dame Cathedral, with a boat. Notre Dame? Is it Notre Dame in France? Okay. Wow, you guys have and Tower Bridge. I saw Tower Bridge. When I went to London, I saw Tower Bridge. All right, let's keep going. What shall we do? Here we have, from all of your fantastic suggestions and reflections, and Lucrezia says that she fell in love with the Natural History Museum. I love museums too. Okay, Sandra adds Camden Market and Tate Gallery are must-sees. I agree. I absolutely agree. I know, Carolina, that's okay. I thought Notre Dame was in France, but you went there too. Now, I've never been to France. I actually slept overnight in Paris, but I never left the hotel. What shall we do? These are the different attractions in London. That's okay, Carolina. It happens to me all the time. We have Buckingham Palace, the London Eye, the Houses of Parliament, the Tower of London, Westminster Abbey, and the Olympic Stadium, which is more modern because that was actually built for the Olympic Games in 2012. So these are different things that we can see in London. And a lot of us have seen them, except I don't think I didn't see the London Eye when I went. And if I were to go back to London, the London Eye is definitely something I would want to see and actually go on. I love Ferris wheels. And from that Ferris wheel, you can see the entire city. So that would be an amazing experience, I think. So these are the different things we can see in London. Now, we're going to leave England. We're going to consider another country. But not a place too far away. Well, actually, you know what? We can go anywhere where we want today. Which country? The country I'd most like to visit is. So I'd like you now to consider a country, a place where you have never been before. And Andrea, this will be a challenge for you because you are definitely a globetrotter. But I want us all to think for a minute about a place we would like to visit that haven't visited yet. And for those of us who travel more often than others, it can be a little bit challenging because you might think, well, I've been everywhere that I want to go. If that's the case, then where do you want to go back to? If you've traveled so much that there's no other place, there's no other new place you would like to visit. I think if I could visit any country, the country I'd most like to visit is, I'd like to go to Brazil. I'd like to go to Brazil. And okay, Australia. Australia, that's a nice one. I should have thought of that, Lucrezia. Japan too. The people are amazing. Japanese people are amazing. Australia, very, very good choice. And Sandra would like to visit Canada. Canada, where in Canada? The French side or the English side? I've been to Toronto. The Canadians are nice. They're very nice people. Does anyone else have an idea, the country you'd most like to visit? And then, of course, considering the country that you have in mind, which city do you want to visit in that country? And Greta says that she would like to visit France and London. Okay, so London is definitely the city that you would like to visit, the city in England. But if you go to France, Greta, which city in France do you want to visit? And you'd like to go to Alaska. Anchorage. Anchorage, Alaska is a city. And Egypt. Hi, Terrence. Good morning, Terrence. Yes, you are late, but that's okay. We've just started. Andrea says he would like to visit Easter Island. Me too. Me too. You know those giant statues they have and no one knows how they move them around the island? That if you go, Andrea, I will go with you. Greta would like to visit Paris in France. So the countries, Ranieri, that you would most like to visit are the United States and Jerusalem. Jerusalem and Israel. And if you choose the US, which American city would you like to visit? Because remember, we're spending a week in a city. So now we get to these superlatives. I'd most like to and I'd least like to. Most being the most positive and least being at the bottom. So we want to consider then places in our city, New York and Hawaii. Catalina, you have a lot of places that you would like to visit. New York is fantastic. I can vouch for that. And my brother lives in Hawaii. He's on the Big Island and he loves it there. He says it's wonderful. And Greta, you'd like to go to Egypt too. Okay, Ranieri says he's only seen Washington. Washington State or Washington, D.C.? Washington State is on the West Coast above California, but Washington, D.C. is where is the national capital. Niagara Falls. Okay, I've been to Niagara Falls too. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. So now, considering the cities in the countries that we would like to visit, we want to come up with sentences that express this. So also you need to think about the attractions of that city. For example, if you choose number 6, the country I'd most like to visit is, And then you choose the country. The United States, for example, as Ranieri said. Washington City, Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, the capital of the country. Lucrezia says, in Australia, I'd like to visit Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. In Japan, Kyoto and Tokyo. I can't choose between them. You don't have to choose. You can go see both. Okay. So now we want to think about also the attractions in the cities that we're visiting. If we take the example of the United States, let me see, the country I'd most like to visit is the US. Then we can go to the city. The city I'd most like to explore is New York. The museum I'd most like to visit is the Guggenheim. The thing I'd most like to do is have a picnic in Central Park. The restaurant I'd most like to eat in is, I have to think of a restaurant. The View. The View is a restaurant in New York that turns around and you can see the entire city from the restaurant. The restaurant itself turns around. It's amazing. In Australia, okay, Lucrezia. So, Lucrezia, I would like you to choose, just for this activity, choose one place, one destination, and then form a sentence about the destination. So you don't have to do all 6, but I would like everybody to do at least one. And as you construct a sentence, put it in the conversation box and tell me what you think. So choose a country, choose a restaurant in a city, choose an activity you would like to do. Choose a museum if you know a museum in the city, a museum you would most like to explore. Or you can also choose the place, since Lucrezia has so many cities and countries in mind, the place you would most like to live in. If you can, give me one positive and one negative. So choose one of the 6. Choose most or least. And then give me the appropriate verb. The city I'd most like to see is Tokyo. The city I'd least like to see is Kansas City. The cities in Middle America don't really attract me very much. I'm sure some of them are wonderful. Just there's that whole idea of Middle America that makes it just so big. And I'm used to living on either coast. I mean, there are fantastic cities in Middle America. I haven't been to enough of them to know which ones I should visit. So this is how you're going to construct your sentence. You choose one of the items, 1 through 6, the city, the place, the museum, the thing, the restaurant, the country. Then you choose I'd most like to or I'd least like to. And then you choose the verb that goes with it. For example, if you choose a restaurant, the restaurant, you can't choose live in because you don't live in a restaurant. So the restaurant I'd most like to eat in is the View in New York. The museum I'd most like to explore is the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The country I'd most like to live in is Italy, because I live here now. So as you come up with your sentences, just put them in the conversation box so we can all have a look and check on your grammar. Okay, so all you have to do is choose one of these 6, choose most or least. These are our superlatives because we know that comparatives are what? Comparatives are when we compare two things. So the Guggenheim is more interesting than the Metropolitan, or the Modern is less expensive than the Guggenheim. But the best museum in New York is the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's also the biggest. It's enormous, that museum. It's absolutely enormous. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen the entire museum. You need several days to visit the Metropolitan. You can't see it in a day. Thank you, Lucrezia. Thank you so much. The place I'd most like to visit in Brisbane is the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary. Beautiful. Everyone, take a look at Lucrezia's fantastic sentence. She chose the place from our list of items on the left. And then she chose the superlative I'd most like to visit in Brisbane. She gave us the location, fantastic, and the name of the place that she wants to visit. Very, very good. Excellent job. And Natasha says, I'd most like to explore the cathedral, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Now, are they rebuilding it? I would like to see it. I would like to see it also. So you would like to explore the cathedral now? I mean, that was a tragedy. That was a tragedy what happened. Anytime the historical structures are ruined, especially from something that could have been avoided, it's definitely a tragedy. Does anyone else have anything else to add? I mean, there's so much information that you could include here. So Greta has said that she would like to explore the cathedral in Paris. Lucrezia has given us a place that she would like to visit in Brisbane. There are also restaurants. You can also state a country. And don't forget, you can give a negative superlative. For example, the thing I'd least like to eat in the Amazon is bugs. Because I read that people who live in the jungle, they eat insects. And that's something that doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I've heard that you can get as much protein from an insect, from certain insects. So there's no need to be choosy over your source of protein. But the idea of eating an insect, I haven't quite gotten there yet. I mean, maybe they're delicious. So the thing I'd least like to eat is an insect in the Amazon. So you can also include a negative superlative in your sentence. For those of you who've given me examples of places you would like to visit, think about a restaurant you can eat in. Think about a museum you can visit. Think about an activity you can do in that place. For example, Ranieri has visited the Niagara Falls. Okay, so the thing I'd least like to do in the Niagara Falls is go over the waterfall in a barrel. That's another thing I don't want to do, ever. I don't know if they even do it anymore. I know they used to. When I was a child, they still did. You could go over in a barrel, and then they stopped because they realized that it wasn't a very good idea. So in your superlative sentences, you can give me a positive superlative and a negative superlative. Also, you can think about famous restaurants in some of the cities we would like to visit. Not necessarily the name of a restaurant, but the type of restaurant. So who was it that said that they wanted Lucrezia, who said that, you wanted to go to Japan. So what restaurant would you most like to eat in? What type of restaurant would you most like to eat in Japan? I would like to go to Japan too. As you're considering your superlatives, your negative and positive superlatives, we want to take a look at some of the museums that we can visit in London. Looking over some of these museums, I'm simply going to ask you a question. Oh, Lucrezia says the thing I'd least like to do is cross the ocean by ship. Thank you very much. Lucrezia has also given us a negative superlative. The thing I'd least like to do is to cross the ocean by ship. So she's given us a negative as well as a positive superlative. And I agree with you. Crossing the ocean by ship, first of all, takes way too long. And I don't think I'd want to be cooped up in a ship for that many days or weeks, because we already see the effects of being cooped up in a place for an extended period of time. It's not a pleasant experience. So let's take a look at our museums. Which museums have you visited, if you have? And which museums would you recommend? Or we can start off a little bit easier than that. What can you see in each museum? We have the National Gallery, the Tate Modern, British Museum, the Natural History Museum, and the Science Museum. What can you see in each museum? So if I were to ask you, which museum would you like to visit? You say, well, I'd like to visit, I'd like to visit the Tate Modern because I love contemporary art. So I want to visit the Tate Modern because I want to see contemporary art from all over the world. So which museum would you like to visit and why? And answering that question gives us also an idea of what we can see in each museum. Do you like to go to museums? Not everybody likes to visit museums. Lucrezia says, I visited National Gallery, the British Museum, and Natural History Museum. I recommend the last one. It's fantastic and very, very big. Thank you so much, Lucrezia. She's been to several of the museums here on this list, and you enjoyed very much the Natural History Museum. What can we see at the Natural History Museum? When you get a chance, Lucrezia, please let us know. If I go to the Natural History Museum, what can I see? Andrea, thank you so much. I'd most like to visit New York to get a lobster soup at Lobster Bar and explore Dylan's Candy Bar. I'd least like to go to a gospel concert. Thank you very much. And in Andrea's sentence, he's given us a superlative, actually several superlatives. He's given us his positive and his negative. He tells us the place he would most like to visit, the city he would most like to visit, what he would most like to eat, where he would most like to explore, and the activity he would like to do the least. Thank you very much, Andrea. Okay, Lucrezia says, I'd like to visit the Science Museum because I love science. Science is very interesting. I was never really good in science at school, but we know that at the History Museum, the Natural History Museum, if it's somewhat similar to the Museum of Natural History in New York, it starts off, obviously, with the history of man or the history of the planet, what we think started everything. So it starts off with different theories of how life started. And it goes basically through the evolution of society. But before that, they have a fantastic dinosaur exhibit in one of the main halls, which is absolutely fantastic. And so you get to explore a lot of that as well. And Greta says, I'd like to visit the National Gallery, British Museum, and Natural History Museum. Me too. Nobody wants to see the Tate Museum. Sandra highly recommended Tate. And being a contemporary art lover myself, I would very much like to visit the Tate Modern. A lot of people, I think, prefer the historical museums. So this way it's more of an educational, well, historical education, as opposed to if you're not a person who really enjoys art museums, then you might find yourself bored in an art museum. Whereas if you visit a history museum of any kind, usually it's very interesting because it can attract all types of people, not just people who enjoy looking at art. So let's try out our superlatives in a negative and positive way. We said the museum I would most like to visit and the museum I would least like to visit. If you ask me, I've already said that the museum I would most like to visit is the Tate Modern because I love contemporary art. And the museum I would least like to visit would be the National Gallery because the art from 1250 to 1900 doesn't really interest me that much. I appreciate it, but it doesn't really attract me. And Lucrezia says, in the Natural History Museum, you can find all the animals and the explanations out of the moon. You can find inside a very big moon. So they have a planetarium as well. Oh, that's wonderful. And you can stay on the floor watching the moon. Oh, I take that back. I think the museum I would most like to visit is the Natural History Museum because I want to see the exhibit about the moon. And I want to lay on the floor and look at the very big moon. And the museum I would least like to visit is the British Museum because a remarkable collection of world-famous objects, I really don't know what that means. If anyone has visited the British Museum, what can you find there? So as you're considering the museums you would most like to visit, least like to visit, and why, for anyone who has visited the British Museum, what can you see there? And Terence and Eric, if you're still there, if you've never been to London, do you want to visit any of these museums? Or more specifically, Eric and Terence, because I know you're listening, do you like museums? So if you decide to take a city break, go on holiday for a week and visit a city, do you want to go to a museum? Now, we've talked about London. We've imagined the countries and the cities that we would like to visit and what we would like to do in those places. We also shared information on the places that we've already seen, as Lucrezia has given us fantastic recommendations on the museums in London. Now we want to talk about our city. So we're going to talk about our hometown. And Terence says, yep. Do you like museums, Terence? Yep. Do you like museums, Terence? Yes, I do. I love museums. And Ranieri says, I visited the British Museum. There is a famous Stelle di Rosetta. Okay, thank you, because that was a museum that I said I didn't want to visit because I didn't know what was there. Thank you very much. Now I know one of the objects that I can see if I visit that museum. Thank you so much. So, my city. Do most of us live in or near Prato? Do we? I live about 20 minutes. No, that's not true. Maybe 15 minutes outside. But for this exercise, oh, you did, Catalina? In reference to what Ranieri says, when you visited the British Museum, you saw that as well. Wow, you guys really get around. You have visited so many places. Now we want to talk about our hometown, our home city. And let's consider the most famous landmarks in our city. Now, you know that I am not Pratese. I do not live and I do not come from Prato. But I live in a fantastic city called Montale. And the most famous landmark in my city is the library. The best time to visit my city is in the spring because it's not overrun by tourists, if you can believe it. The best restaurants to eat in are, there's a fantastic pizza restaurant in the city center. And the most fun thing to do in my city is get ice cream at the ice cream shop, which is also in the city center. And the thing I'd most like to do but haven't done yet is walk around the city center on foot, because usually I just drive my car straight through it. I only stop when I have to, but maybe I should take the time to explore the fantastic city of Montale. So considering now the city where you live, we want to make different sentences. Take a look at the blue sentences on the left side of your screen. Think about the most famous landmark. Now, Prato has a lot more landmarks than Montale. The best time to visit Prato, it could be the time of day or the time of year. For example, if you're inviting someone to visit the city of Prato, maybe you wouldn't invite them in the morning when everyone is going to work. You might choose a different time of day, or maybe even a different day of the week. Can you recommend any restaurants in Prato? And an activity. If someone is visiting you in your city, what's a very fun thing to do? And is there anything that you would like to do but you haven't done yet? This is something to consider. If I'm talking about my home city, New York, then of course my sentences completely change. The most famous landmarks of my city are the Freedom Tower, the Empire State Building, and the Statue of Liberty. The best time to visit my city is September. If you want to see New York, the best time to go is September, right after the summer holiday. The best restaurants to eat in are, I'm going to say steak bars, because steak bars in New York are really good. And the most fun thing to do in New York is to take the ferry around Ellis Island. And the thing I'd most like to do but haven't done yet is go to the top of the Empire State Building. I've never been to the top. So as you're going through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, these are sentence prompts, I would like you to give me recommendations for things that we can do in your city. And you can also give negative recommendations, like I don't recommend, I don't suggest, I don't think we should. Notice that when you use recommend or I suggest, it's followed by the gerund. So I recommend seeing the Statue of Liberty. I suggest eating in a steak bar. I think we should take the ferry around Ellis Island. Branieri. The most famous museum in Prato is Cathedral Museum with a painting by Filippo Lippi and the Museum and Palace Pretorio. Okay, thank you very much. So these are fantastic things to see in the city of Prato. And I'm ashamed to admit that I've never visited either. But Andrea, the most famous landmark in Montale is not the incinerator. I just said it was the library. Yes, for those of you who don't know, we have an incinerator in Montale as well. We protested, and we tried to fight the powers, but to no avail. They finished the incinerator and they burn all the garbage here. It's a tragedy. Lucrezia says the most famous landmark in Prato, most landmarks, in Prato are the castle, the cathedral, and the textile museum. Thank you very much. I have visited the textile museum. Yes, I have. And I think the history of this territory about textiles, about fabrics, is amazing. It's amazing. I mean, that's an aspect, a cultural aspect that belongs just to the people from Prato, because once you leave the territory, then they have other things that they're extremely proud of. Like, actually, I live in Pistoia. Shh. I'm in the province of Pistoia. So my children, when they went to school, everything was about plants, 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 plants. And then when I started working in Prato, I realized that there was a completely different culture that talked about things that were important to them. I recommend having a pizza at Sapore. Now, wait, excuse me, Andrea, where is this pizza restaurant? Are we still in Montale or are we in another city? I love how you just drop these little tidbits of information. So is there anything that's a lot of fun in Prato that you can suggest? And for those of you who live in Prato, or if you live in another city, what do you like to do? And how would you recommend that to someone else? For example, sometimes in the spring and in the summer months, there are exhibits at the library in Montale, which is one of the most interesting landmarks in Montale. And I suggest visiting one of the exhibits, possibly on a night where they have music. And that way you can also walk around the grounds, because there's a lot of property outside. There's a garden around the library once you go in through the walls. And so it's a very relaxing and entertaining evening right outside the center of Montale, because the library is not in this historical center. So what do you most like to do in your town or your city? And how would you recommend it to someone else? So I recommend visiting the library, not the incinerator in Montale, because it's actually become more expensive now to get rid of your garbage. You have to pay to throw it away, which doesn't really make much sense to me. Okay, so think about activities that you find interesting and entertaining in your city. And how would you recommend it to someone else? And that brings us to our last slide for this morning. I hope you've enjoyed your virtual visit, because we've visited so many places this morning, between listening about Japan and possibly Australia. A lot of you have shared a lot of information about London and England. We've also heard a little bit about New York and the fantastic metropolitan Montale. For those of you who have heard about it but have never actually visited, I highly recommend visiting my mega city. Fantastic place to live, fantastic place to work from home. And if you find yourself confined to your house, There's no better place to be than in Montale. Okay, so what would you like to do? You are the host, and I'm asking you for advice of what to see in your city. What do you want to see? I recommend, I don't recommend. So for the last few minutes of our focus, I am the tourist. You are my host. And I'm going to tell you things that I would like to do. And I would like you to give me a suggestion or give me a warning. For example, I would like to go shopping and I love shoes. Activities depends on your taste if you are sporty or restaurant lover, etc. Okay, Sandra, I like good wine. I like good wine. I don't, very expensive restaurants, no, but a nice place to taste wine. Not really happy hour. So I like wine and I like shoes. I like good shoes. So I need some recommendations. Oh, and Andrea says, is Sapore is in Prato. You can get a fantastic crunchy pizza. I've never heard of this place. Where is it? Is it in the center? I've never heard of this place. All right, so I'm visiting you all. I'm visiting you all in Prato. I need some suggestions. I don't know what to do. I'd like to go shopping. I like to drink wine. And I would like to visit a museum. You'd like to go to a pizza restaurant, Greta. Then you can come with me. Greta, you can come with me. We'll eat a pizza together. We'll go eat at Sapore. Lucrezia says, I'd most like to walk in Prato on Friday and Saturday nights in the summertime drinking something cold. I always drink sangria. Very nice, Lucrezia. So is this something you recommend? So if I am visiting Prato, do you recommend walking around the city on a Friday or Saturday night? I love to eat too, Greta. I love to eat a lot. I don't eat big quantities. I eat a little bit, but I eat often because I actually enjoy the process. I enjoy the process of eating. So can anyone give me some final recommendations when I come visit your city? We already have a pizza place where we can eat. As Andrea mentioned, Sapore is a great place to go. We have some suggestions about museums, like the Textile Museum or the Cathedral Museum in the center. Thank you, Sandra. Sandra says downtown there is a couple of shoe shops, very furnished, and there's a nice place to taste wine in 5 minutes. Fantastic. You see that? Now we've organized our Friday or Saturday evening because I love shoes, not high heel shoes. I need shoes that I can run in, shoes that I can walk quickly in. In high heels, I'm not very gracious. But in flat shoes, I'm okay. All right, listen, thank you so much for your recommendations on the fantastic city of Prato. We're coming to the end of our focus activity. In today's focus, what did we do? Well, we went away for a week. We decided what to do in different cities, not only in Europe, but also on the other hemisphere. Lucrezia says, I recommend seeing the Cortejo Storico in September. And after this, you can see fireworks with a lot of classic music in Piazza Duomo. I've never been there. I hear about it every year, but I never go. I think this year I'm going to go. And it's in September, you say. Carolina adds, thank you, Sandra. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Carolina says you can go to Scarpamondo for shoes, but it is for babies and not for adults. Thank you, Carolina. But I'm not a baby. I'm an adult. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It was a great way to start our week, traveling around, visiting different cities in Viale della Repubblica in front of the courthouse. Is this the pizza restaurant we're talking about? Thank you very much. I'm going to make note of it. Keep in mind that we are live again tomorrow on YouTube and on our Facebook page. So for those of you who are available, please join me again tomorrow morning at 11 for another Focus Live. Thank you, everybody, for your participation and your good company. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye, everyone. Have a great day, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much, everybody. What a great way to start the week. It's a great way to start the week.